Afternoon, and thank you for joining us today to launch this new Merrill Center report addressing veteran underemployment. My name is Tom Mahnken, and I'm a senior research professor at SAIS. Joining me shortly to discuss this report will be General Jack Keane. General Keane is a foreign policy and national security expert who provides nationwide analysis and commentary in speeches, articles, congressional testimony, and through several hundred television and radio interviews annually. He's the executive chairman of AM General, a member of numerous boards and foundations to include the chairman of the Institute for the Study of War and the Knollwood Foundation. Before that, General Keane had a 37-year career of public service that culminated in his appointment as acting chief of staff and vice chief of staff of the U.S. Army. As I say, General Keane will be joining us shortly to talk about this report, and then we'll be having a discussion with those of you in attendance as well. But before I get to my discussion with General Keane, I want to say a few words about the report itself, which is available for download on the Merrill Center website. And before I even do that, I'd like to begin by thanking a number of organizations and people who made this study possible. This project was supported by the Schultz Family Foundation through American Corporate Partners. And I'd also like to thank George Goodfriend for his research assistance on the project, my colleagues Nora Benzahel, Mara Carlin, and Lieutenant Colonel Angelique Pfeiffer for their helpful comments on earlier drafts of the study. I'd particularly like to thank my research assistant, Hannah Dennis, for all of her assistance, and most of all, Stephanie Papa of the Merrill Center for her tireless efforts to bring this project to fruition. Now, the study, which I really hope you will read in full, this study addresses the challenge of veteran underemployment and increasingly in today's economy, the challenge of veteran unemployment. The United States military has been engaged continually in combat over nearly 2 decades since September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks. Yet when these service members return home, many face challenges, including the pervasive problem of underemployment. And the social and economic dislocation caused by the COVID-19 pandemic has only magnified this challenge, which will likely endure over months and years. Indeed, the challenge of veteran underemployment is likely to become a large-scale problem of veteran unemployment. And particularly vulnerable will be those enlisted members who lack a college degree, as well as skills that translate into private sector careers. So this study explores the challenge of veteran underemployment and efforts to deal with it. And it does so primarily through a case study of one particular organization, American Corporate Partners, a 12-year-old nonprofit organization based in New York City. And it uses that case study as a way of understanding how mentorship can help serve veterans who are transitioning to the civilian economy. The study and my remarks today begin by discussing the population of post 9/11 veterans and the magnitude of the challenge of veteran underemployment. I'm then going to go on to examine the value of mentorship programs in meeting the needs of veterans in finding jobs in the civilian economy. And the report also then concludes by evaluating the effectiveness of the mentorship approach in meeting these challenges. And that's a topic we'll discuss further as this program goes on. So let's start by talking about who post 9/11 veterans are. The 2018 US Census reports that there are nearly 4 million post 9/11 veterans who've transitioned from military to civilian life. And in years to come, this population will grow as nearly 200,000 servicemen and women are expected to leave military service each year. Now, this newest cohort of veterans is notably diverse in age, race, ethnicity, and educational background. Unlike previous generations of veterans, the majority of post 9/11 veterans come from urban environments, with rural veterans making up just 10% of the total post 9/11 population. And again, that's a real shift from past generation of veterans. In terms of race and ethnicity, the post 9/11 population of veterans has more Hispanic and fewer white, non-Hispanic, and Black veterans than previous generations. The post 9/11 veteran population also contains a higher percentage of women than prior veteran cohorts, and that's expected to continue into the future. The Department of Veteran Affairs population projection model, which projects the demographic composition of the US veteran population out to fiscal year 2045, predicts that male veteran population will decrease steadily and the female and minority veteran populations will increase as the proportion of the overall veteran population over time. And the model predicts an increase in the proportion of Hispanic and Asian veterans and a decline in the share of white and Black veterans. Other studies project that the share of rural veterans among the total veteran population will continue its long-term decline. So what we see now is going to continue out into the future. Now, if we look at this veteran population and look at the challenges that it faces, we see that many service members face similar challenges as they leave military service and transition to civilian life. One 2019 survey reports that 2/3 of female veteran respondents and more than half of male veteran respondents describe the transition experience as either difficult or very difficult. The challenge of reintegration into civilian life seems to affect post 9/11 veterans more than earlier generations of veterans. And I think there's a number of reasons for that, but I think the increased difficulty in transitioning to civilian life is one manifestation of a larger civil-military gap. It's one manifestation of that. And it's a gap that's grown since the advent of the all-volunteer force in the 1970s, as fewer civilians now have direct ties to members of the military. And that manifests itself in a number of ways, but it certainly manifests itself in the experience that veterans have in transitioning to the civilian workforce. Surveys show that today's transitioning veterans face common financial, social, and personal challenges. In one survey, veteran respondents listed financial issues, separation from family, deployments, relocation stress, and job stress as the top 5 issues they faced following their separation from the military. Other surveys highlight the difficulty of navigating government programs, such as those of the Department of Veteran Affairs, their veteran benefits and services, applying military learned skills to civilian life, and adjusting to civilian culture as other significant challenges facing transitioning veterans. Now, the government has certainly attempted to do its part to ease the transition for separating service members, to include the Transitional Assistance Program, or TAP, which is a mandatory program that all service members must attend before they separate. And then there's a number of veterans benefits to include the post 9/11 GI Bill, educational benefits, and so forth. And judging solely from unemployment rates, veterans have done pretty well, or they were doing about as well as the rest of the economy. From December 2011 to December 2019, the unemployment rate for post 9/11 veterans declined from 12.1% to just 3.5%, which roughly tracks with the civilian unemployment rate over the same period. The challenge facing veterans in the pre-COVID-19 world was not unemployment, but underemployment, defined as full-time work that is either objectively or subjectively below a given employee's education, experience, or comparable compensation level. And again, I think there's a number of reasons why veterans have faced the challenge of underemployment. Ranges from unclear vision of the future, inability to leverage military skills into workplace attributes, or simply due to a lack of personal and professional networks. Either way, post 9/11 veterans enter the workforce a step behind their civilian counterparts. However, in the current economic climate, the challenge of veteran underemployment has rapidly become one of widespread veteran unemployment. and this is a problem that's likely to persist for years. The COVID-19 pandemic has seen a spike in unemployment that is likely to continue to rise in coming months as major corporations lay off large numbers of workers. And as hiring picks back up, the first to be rehired will be those who were laid off or furloughed. Those with directly translatable skills will follow. Third in line will be young, energetic college and high school graduates. And in this environment, the more than 150,000 military members who are expected to separate from military service over the next 12 months will face a difficult time finding employment. Veterans who lack translatable experience and who are older than their civilian counterparts will be at a disadvantage to find jobs. Particularly vulnerable will be former enlisted service members, such as Army and Marine infantrymen, many of whom are overqualified for entry-level positions, but lack a bachelor's degree and the job skills needed to translate into private sector careers. So this report examines the mentorship approach as a way to meet the challenge of veteran underemployment and increasingly veteran unemployment. Soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines are familiar with the mentorship approach, right? They're while on active duty, they're encouraged to seek mentors to help them develop leadership skills and advance through their careers. However, these military mentors can be of limited help in helping them navigate their post-military careers. The approach that we explore in this report is one of matching veteran proteges with civilian mentors to help them navigate the civilian world, to give them opportunities for personal growth and long-term professional development. So the program that we examine in the report is one run by ACP, a nonprofit that seeks to match veterans with mentors to help them in the civilian world. And this program generally focuses on 4 areas, the mentorship program. The first is the development of hard skills, including discussions about how to translate military skills into workplace attributes, interviews training, resume reviews, and cover letter advice. Second is the development of soft skills, such as navigating interpersonal work relationships and learning the difference in work culture to include how to engage with colleagues, build relationships with supervisors, and advocate on one's own behalf. The third area of mentorship focuses on career exploration, and this is really tailored to post 9/11 veterans who lack a clear vision of their next occupation. And because the program includes partner companies from a diverse group of industries, mentors have the ability to help proteges explore a wide range of career paths, such as engineering, finance, human resources, and real estate. The final focus of a mentorship is to learn networking practices that will allow veterans to navigate better the civilian world and achieve their career objectives outside the military. In addition, over the past decade, mentors in this program have worked with their veteran counterparts on improving professional communication methods, finding a work-life balance, learning civilian language, culture and norms, and in some cases, starting and building a small business. So the program is discussed in depth in the report, which again, I would urge you to download from the Merrill Center website and read. Suffice it to say that it's a program based on the careful pairing of mentors with proteges and the careful development and fostering of those relationships. Now, ACP has used this approach with more than 17,000 veterans spanning across 5,300 towns and cities nationwide. And that cohort has successfully completed an ACP mentorship, with more than half of its alumni completing their mentorships within the past three years. Of the alumni proteges surveyed, a majority found that the mentorship program provided a valuable opportunity for them to improve their resume and interview skills, to translate military experience into civilian terms, to build a professional network, and to refine civilian career goals and professional ambitions. Overall, 98% of completed proteges said they would recommend the program to a fellow veteran. And that high satisfaction rate is reflected in mentors as well. So in 2019, 99% of the more than 2,000 active mentors surveyed stated that they were glad their company participated and would recommend the program to another colleague. Moreover, 98% of mentors said they would consider being a mentor again. So this is an approach, I think, that augments other programs, other approaches that are out there to help veterans navigate their post-military job world. And it's one that's obviously needed and needed more now than ever. First, because the population of veterans entering the civilian workforce is growing. And second, because it's growing at the very time that the US economy is facing high unemployment. Veterans have experienced difficulty applying their military skills into those valued within the civilian workforce in a low unemployment economy. And these challenges are only growing in a high unemployment economy that will see veterans competing with younger workers who possess greater work experience. The mentorship approach, which has demonstrated its ability to help veterans meet the challenge of underemployment, is likely to be all the more important in battling the looming challenge of veteran unemployment that the nation will face in the months and years to come. And so to help continue this conversation, we're going to do two things. First, I want to have a conversation with General Keane. General Keane, who through his military career and his post-military career is very well positioned to talk to us about the challenges that veterans face as they transition from their military career to the civilian workforce, and also is well positioned to talk about mentorship and the role that mentorship of veterans can play in helping veterans. So I want to have that conversation, and then I'd like to use that as a bridge to a conversation with all of you who have joined us. And so for that, as you have questions, please enter them in the Q&A field. And then when I'm done with the conversation with General Keane, we'll open it up for general discussion, and I'll call on you from the Q&A field. But for now, let me turn to General Keane and open up the discussion to include him.
Am I there?
Hey, General. Good to see you today.
Yeah, good to see you, Tom.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us. And this is a topic that I know you know a great deal about, and you've been dealing with in various ways throughout your career and your careers. So I wanted to ask you first about the challenges that you've seen veterans face as they leave military service and enter the civilian workforce. Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Let me just preface that by a couple of statements. One, my appreciation also for the Schultz Foundation for sponsoring this work, and also for Sid Goodfriend, who is a friend, and he's the head of ACP, American Corporate Partners. And let me just say a word about Sid. I mean, Sid is very successful in the financial service business in Wall Street. Walked away from all of that when he discovered that there was such a need in terms of helping our veterans enter the workforce, and recognized that a mentorship program was the key to that success. And I worked with Sid early on as a retired four-star general with others to try to penetrate the United States government's bureaucracy in establishing a public and private partnership. And I'll tell you what, guys, it was a Herculean effort for us to get access to veterans' names, et cetera, and convince the establishment, despite retired guys like me and the number two in the Bush administration Defense Department, Paul Wolfowitz, was trying to tell them that it was okay. But we finally got there. and it's been highly successful, as you touted. And I'm an advisor to that organization, ACP, and I'm also blessed and fortunate to be an advisor to CSBA, the organization that Tom heads up, and it's been a pleasure for a huge number of years to be a part of all of that. Yeah, I mean, the problem has become considerably more dramatic for the obvious, that when we moved to an all-volunteer force in 1975, then a much smaller percentage of people participated in military service. And as the generations went by, those people who have served represent a very small percentage of our society. And it's those people in that society as corporate executives and decision makers that veterans are trying to contact, to gain employment. In the past, the majority of people who were in those key positions that were making decisions about employment indeed had served. And that's the reality of it. But now they have not. And it's not because of some social stigma or something associated with being a veteran. It's just that people don't have a working familiarity with it. And it's quite natural, the decisions that are being made, without that familiarity. So, and it's also incumbent upon the veterans to sort of step up here and help themselves a little bit in terms of articulating how they can transfer their work and life experience in the military and be beneficial to an industry that they want to be a part of, where they can absolutely add value. And that's really the major issue that's here. And it's compounded by other issues, certainly, dealing with an enlisted force that represents 80% of the veterans that are coming out. And we estimate over the next year, there'll be 200,000 veterans attempting to join the workforce in some capacity. And 80% of those are enlisted. And in that pool, the entire pool, 40% or so do not have a baccalaureate degree, which makes their employment more challenging, but also there is considerable employment opportunities out there for people who do not have a baccalaureate degree, as we all know. So building that bridge, I think, is really the challenge, and that's why I applaud this effort. I don't recognize something that's similar to this that's been done recently, and particularly as our challenges are compounded by COVID and the post-COVID period that we're eventually will enter into, where our economy has taken a downturn and obviously unemployment has skyrocketed. Yeah, so this is a much more significant challenge for our veterans going forward than what it has been in the past.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you, and I particularly, I appreciate you linking this to some of the broader trends, right? Yeah, the changing structure of the Army, the civil-military gap, even kind of the changing demography of our nation. I wanted to ask you about mentorship, because I know it's something that's in your bones, in your fiber. A key part of your military career and certainly your post-military career. I want to ask you, what role do you think that mentorship can play in addressing the challenges that you've laid out, as opposed to, there are other programs out there that address veterans' needs, but you could speak specifically to the value of mentorship as you saw it during your Army career and as you've seen it since leaving the Army.
Yeah, well, growing up in a hierarchical institution like I did for 38 years, you're on the receiving side of mentorship for a fair amount of it, and at some point you become the mentor, and I think it's absolutely invaluable, and it became part of my DNA, so to speak. And to be frank about it, people that I've worked with for years, I'm still helping them to this day. And I've been doing it every single year of the more than a decade that I've been retired as a result of those associations. And sometimes it's just a quick phone call. Hey, boss, got some advice here, trying to make a change. What do you think? Sometimes it's a little bit more involved than all of that. What I have found is that when you have a formal program like American Corporate Partners has, they want an hour a month, one-on-one, virtual most of the time, certainly all the time now, mentor and mentee, do it for a year. And I think it's incredibly invaluable to bridge that gap that exists. And that industry leader is bringing a wealth of experience to assist that the veteran in making that move and how to deal with it, and also building confidence in that individual too. And then that industry leader has access to other leaders in industry just because of the position that person holds. And once they know what the career field of interest the veteran has, then that exploration can get a little bit more specific. And you're right, and they give them the additional hard and soft skill tools to help bridge that gap. And those are important and not to be taken lightly because their competitors are very familiar with all of that. But it is really vital. I mean, I got started on this, frankly. I was 4-star visiting our soldiers in Afghanistan. I ran into a soldier, a staff sergeant engineer. He'd lost a leg, blind in one eye, walked into the room. He struggled to his feet on one leg. And I said, Sergeant, please sit down. And he said, no, general in the room, I'm standing, sir. And so I eventually got him to sit down and talk to him a little bit. And he grew up in the mountains in western Pennsylvania. And his mother was dead, didn't have a relationship with his father to speak of. And I was very concerned about him. He wanted to stay in the Army. I knew he couldn't, not because of the loss of leg. We could cope with that, to be quite frank about it, but because of the loss of sight. He was blind. So, I mean, I told him that, that's just not going to be possible. But we're going to do everything we can for you, But I walked out of there and I said, well, what are we really going to do for him, And I tried even as a 4-star to get a mentorship program going for our people that were leaving. But once they go out the door, the legal issues that became not just impediments, but major obstacles for us to assist somebody. So it was very frustrating. And we recognized that it was going to take the private sector, and Sid Goodfriend understood what the challenges were. And by the way, I insisted, I told one of my generals, I said, wow, you got a mission, and your mission is to keep an eye on this guy, even though legally we can't do anything substantively for him. But he eventually got a college education and became a degree-holding engineer with incredible valued experience in the United States military. But the mentorship is so invaluable. And the subtle thing about it is that not only are the vets being assisted, but think about it. I mean, there's thousands of leaders from industry that participate in this program and do not have identity with veterans, but are intrigued by the idea of being able to give something back to the country. And as a result of that experience, most of them ask to do it again. But then what also happens is that they become a catalyst inside their own company to reach out more to veterans than what the company's been doing. And in some cases, they're not doing anything. So there's significant benefits to the program, but we also have to keep it in perspective there's 200,000 coming out within the next year, and American corporate partners will do roughly mentor around 4,000 of that. So while that is extraordinarily valuable in terms of those 4,000, they will all find positions. Their track record of success is just about 100%. But that's a far cry from what the need is. So yes, it is an invaluable program. I think it's one of the many keys to success, and it's the most successful that I've observed.
Well, let me ask you one more question before we open it up to our audience for questions. And realizing that the essence of mentorship is one-on-one, I'm gonna depart from that just because I have you here. And the question I have for you is, what would you say is the one thing that veterans don't understand, or one of the most significant things that veterans don't understand about the civilian world? And conversely, what's one of the most important things that civilians in industry don't understand about the veterans and the veteran world?
Yeah, well, I think when you get into the private sector, the veterans are used to a hierarchical organization, but what they're not used to is the language, culture, customs of the industry that they're becoming associated with. And many who are seeking that employment do have a familiarity with it because they're likely already working in the industry, or they prepared themselves education-wise for that industry directly. So and adjusting to the culture and the language for veterans, can be something of a challenge. So any preparation that's done prior to that, I think, is very helpful. The thing about the military is that one of the things that we're imbued with is we're submitting ourselves to something larger than ourselves. Mm-hmm. And it's very much a shared sense of teamwork. But the significance of it is that you are willing to sacrifice at the expense of yourself for the sake of the team. And the degree that that's imbued in our veterans is very significant and likely undervalued by our private industry leaders. Because again, many of them have not had a similar experience themselves, given the numbers that actually serve in military service. I mean, there's other things certainly dealing with work ethic and self-discipline. I understand that, but the degree that we hold that as a valued and treasured attribute of the profession, and a sense of service that goes along with that, I think is pretty significant.
Great, thank you for that. Okay, I'd like to open it up to questions from the audience. Again, please submit your questions in the Q&A function, and I will take them. While we're waiting for questions, I want to ask you another one, General. I won't let you off quite that easy. What parts of the veteran pool, and former veterans, do you think are most at risk in underemployment and unemployment? I mean, certainly there are some fields, of military service that translate pretty readily into civilian careers. Others sort of less so. I mean, what patterns have you seen?
Well, I mean, clearly there are significant challenges with veterans who are handicapped themselves, have traumatic brain injuries, and also have serious catastrophic handicaps. But they actually represent a small percentage, fortunately. but they certainly are challenged. But I spent my life as an infantry paratrooper, so I'm pretty familiar with the combat arms and with infantry. And look, at the end of the day, the soldiers that do all the fighting and all the dying, and I'm quite biased by this, but history would bear me out and the facts bear me out, are soldiers that fight on the ground and fight in close combat with an enemy. And those skill sets to be able to do that and having the aptitude to do that are at a premium. And it's not for everybody, certainly, and not everybody can do that. And that's just the reality of life itself. So how do we transfer the sense of team building that's associated with that, the cohesion, the self-discipline, the coping with fear on a regular basis, and not being afraid of being afraid is a major lesson in life that most people in this particular category understand very well. And there's no shame in being afraid. I'll be frank about it. In combat, my body has shook. Hands, arms, and actual legs. I call it raw, stark fear. But I was part of an institution that helped me cope with that and still perform to an acceptable standard under that kind of stress. So, I've been around these people all my life, and I've always been in awe of them because of what they're willing to sacrifice. They're willing to put everything they care about in life at risk. So how do we help them? They've got enormous personal attributes. They can make a genuine commitment and contribution to any organization, in my view, if given a chance. So that's going to take some education on the part of the corporate world to understand. It's not enough for an articulate infantry enlisted soldier to be able to go into an industry and attempt to transfer by himself his life experience as an infantry soldier in combat to how he can add value to that particular corporation. I mean, he has to be familiar with that, certainly, but there has to be some empathy, some appreciation for who is this in front of me, whose experience and life experience is so different from most all of us in this corporation or in this industry. Not completely, but for most, for sure. And I think there has to be some willingness to understand and trust who this person is and how they can contribute. But they're the most, I think, the most obvious, most pronounced a group of people. And some of them will just fall into entry-level positions, as you mentioned in the outset, that they're significantly overqualified for, as a result of it, and be frustrated by that, and it impacts their self-esteem, etc.
Good. Well, look, thank you for joining us for this report launch. Thank all of you who've taken the time to join us for the report launch. For those of you who haven't, again, I'd urge you to download the report and to read it in full. And we look forward to continuing the conversation on this important issue as we move forward. So, General Keane, thanks for taking the time. All of you, thank you for taking the time. Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.